Hey everyone, welcome to the stream. Welcome to another amazing AMA here at Hack the Box. I'm almost at a loss for words, and I'm the one hosting it. Today we have an incredible guest. I dare say our spookiest guest yet. Jack Rhysider is here from Darknet Diaries, here to talk to us about Darknet Diaries, his amazing excursions in hacking just in his career, and then answer some of the questions that y'all have. Heck yeah. Well, without further ado, Jack, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself? Thanks so much, too, and welcome.
I'm Jack Rhysider. These are true stories from the dark side of the internet. Yeah, I mean, I make the podcast Darknet Diaries. Before that, I was a network security engineer. So for like 10 years doing firewalls and intrusion detection systems, looking for threats in the network and hardening the perimeter, that sort of thing. And I was just really fascinated with good stories in cybersecurity world. And, there's high drama ones out there and just really exciting stories that come across our radar in a very dry way. Like they're just news stories that are like, I don't know, they're boring almost, right? And I'm like, this is a high drama story. There needs to be somebody telling this story properly from like the beginning to the end. And I just didn't see it. So I ended up making the podcast myself for that reason, because I wanted to hear it. I wanted it. And yeah, here we are 6 years later, one of the biggest podcasts in the technology space of podcasting.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I know. I remember first time I listened to the podcast, I think was the Xbox Underground episodes. And I mean, it's exactly that. It's so exciting. And there's so much there that I can tell you, at least from my experience and everyone that I've spoken to, that you've really done a great service for the industry. And you've really created something that there really just isn't anything like it out there for hackers and people in InfoSec.
Yeah, I think it's important for me that we share these stories about like the worst day of our life on the job, like that time we got breached or something, and how you dealt with that. Like, what were the first steps? What was the teams like that were handling it and all that sort of thing? And a lot of people are embarrassed to share this. They don't want to share it. I get CEOs asking me all the time, "Can I be on your show? I'd love to talk about the latest threats in ransomware." I'm like, I want to talk about the day you got breached. I know you did, and you didn't talk about it ever before. So now's the time to talk about it. Come on and tell me that. And they don't ever want to talk about that. And that's the stuff that I think is important to share, right? Those horrible moments in your whole career.
Have you ever had someone, just out of curiosity, have you ever had someone, and no need to name names, but someone back out of your podcast just for not wanting to talk about something that happened?
Yeah, there was one where the story they thought was, over and done. And so they shared all the story with me. And then it went to court. Right. So that was like, hold on a second. We just gave our whole defense side of like what we did and how we handled it. Like, can we take that off? Because we want to finish this court case before doing it. So I had to retract that episode.
That's, just an interesting situation. Thank you so much for talking about that briefly. I think you're getting actually a head start on the questions that I had. One of them, which we can go ahead and go right in. What was your motivation to starting this podcast? You mentioned, wanting to tell these stories. Was there anything more you wanted to speak on with that?
Yeah, I mean, I was really, really, really into podcasts at the time, right? Like I'd be driving somewhere and then like a story would come on about a suitcase or something, and I'm glued to it. I'm like, how is this such a good story? I don't care about suitcases. And I just could not like step away from it. And I was like, what is happening here? Why is this like hacking my brain basically to keep me interested? And I was just so fascinated with like how good storytelling could be. And yeah, I mean, that was kind of, there's a lot of different factors. I read Kevin Mitnick's book, Ghost in the Wires. And I was like, this is such a good story. How come I can't just have like this all day, every day stories like this? This is all I want to hear. And just hearing some people's stories at different talks and conferences and stuff, I'm like, like everyone in the world needs to hear this story. This is such a crazy story that you just told. And only 30 people in the audience or something. Like, come on, we got to get more. And so, just a lot of stuff I'm seeing everywhere. And I'm just like, okay, do I have to make this? Because nobody else is making it. Oh, crap. I think I do. And it started like that, right? And
Don't you hate
yeah,
when that happens? You find the thing and you're like, I want this to happen, but you're gonna have to be the one that does it.
yeah, it really took 9 months of convincing myself, yeah, you have to do it. There's no one else doing it. And I got a book called Out on the Wire, which is a storytelling book, how the great audio storytellers do it, right? So it's like Ira Glass and Jad Abumrad and Roman Mars, these people, how they do their storytelling. And I was like, this is perfect. I think that's the key element here, is that storytelling aspect. If I don't have that nailed, everything else is just going to be boring or dry or missing the point or something like that. So I really need to get this. And that's what I spent a long time crafting stories, playing with story tools and storytelling aspects, and going to workshops and reading books. And just storytelling became my life for a good year of just trying to figure out the best way to tell stories.
That's incredible. I mean, it's incredible to think how much effort you put into focusing on just that one aspect. Would you say that storytelling really is at the heart of what makes Darknet Diaries, I guess?
Yeah, I think what in my heart, the thing I think I want to do the most is teach. I want to be a teacher. I want to show you this stuff. I want to teach you new things. But that comes off as boring and dry, right? You don't sit down and learn for fun. Like, a lot of people do. I do. But it's just one of those, like, okay, we're gonna eat broccoli now. And it's like a hard thing to like digest in your head and try to remember and stuff. So what I want to do is I want to give you this huge dish of broccoli, but I want to cover it in wonderful tasting sauce. So you just can't get enough of the broccoli. You want more and more and more, because it's dressed up in such a delicious way. And that's where the storytelling aspect comes in. That's the sauce. It's making it taste so good. And then you're really learning a ton while listening to it, because I'm telling you about tools. We're getting into the weeds on how these hacks happened and what the different laws are that happen and what these companies do and how this technology works. And yeah, that's kind of the merging of the two, of teaching and storytelling. Some people call it edutainment, but I never use that term to describe what I do.
I mean, that's interesting to hear that take on that. I'd love to touch on that thread later on edutainment. Real quick. Well, I guess two thoughts. One, as a Midwesterner, I can't say I've ever heard broccoli or ranch talked about within the context of education. That's a new one for me.
Yeah.
Do you have any? So these don't have to be InfoSec related podcasts. Do you have any favorite podcasts that you like to listen to?
Yeah. I mean, my favorite news one is Risky Business. So that's cybersecurity news. And I like to listen to the Blind Boy podcast. That's an Irish fella. It's like feeling like you're getting a hug every time you listen to him.
I can't say I expected either of those answers.
So yeah, you caught me off guard with that one. So I do have I do have a
little bit.
I've listened to like every podcast there is. I know there's like a million, so I'm exaggerating, but I listen to a ton of shows, and I do have a list of recommendations for like podcasts similar to mine. If you just Google it, what's Darknet Diaries, similar shows or other shows like Darknet Diaries, you'll probably hit my website, which is like a playlist of some of my favorite shows that are in the cybersecurity storytelling realm, and they're all really good. Like the Missing Crypto Queen, or gosh, there's just there's so many. Can't think of them off the top of my head.
You're starting to run into some of them that I've just seen with looking around out there. Real quick note on that. For those that are viewing this, if you've never been to the Darknet Diaries website, I do highly recommend checking that out. Jack actually has his entire audio recording setup on there with each of the episodes. I mentioned this because it's how I got my audio set up, and you've got a lot of really cool merch designs. Not to talk smack about Hack the Box by any means, but y'all make some cool ones with the birds that have the cameras of the faces, things like that. So yeah, no, touching on that. Have you ever put out that list of just similar podcasts on your website or anything like that?
Yeah, it's on there. darknetdiaries.com/you might also like.
Gotcha. Cool. No, thank you. Not to drag it away from Darknet Diaries by any means. Now, on the note of the podcast, I guess getting things started off there, how did you start finding these stories? How do you, I mean, even nowadays, how do you find the stories that you want to tell?
Yeah, in the early days, I listened to, I think I was painting my house, and I was just like, I need a ton of audio to listen to. I might as well listen to every security talk that anyone's ever recorded. So I went on YouTube and I just found like all B-sides recordings and security conferences recordings and all like DEF CON talks and Black Hat talks. I literally listened to like hundreds of them. And in there, I found stories that I'm like, well, you already gave this talk at this conference. Do you mind coming on my show and telling me the same story? And it was good, right? So it was just kind of scooping them up from the conferences. And then I also set up like Google alerts that said something like hacker sentenced. If that shows up in a news article, that is gold to me, because if a hacker's sentenced, then a hacker's been found guilty. And if a hacker's been found guilty, then they've been arrested. And if they've been arrested, they've done something wrong. And so you got the whole story there. And the court transcripts are going to give you all kinds of cool stuff too, that you can just be like, wow, this is all research for me. The FBI already researched it for me. I just need to like tell it now. So those are my favorite, is when it's all done. But now I'm at the stage where people listen and they hear it and they trust me to be able to tell their story for them. And so people come out of prison and they're like, I need to tell my story, and you're the guy to tell it. So what do we do? And yeah, the best stories are coming to me now.
I mean, that's really cool. It's cool that you've been able to set yourself up and be recognizable as someone that can tell these stories and do them justice. Do you feel like that's one of the more rewarding parts of running the podcast?
Yes, I think it's kind of a luck that I've created, right? So I feel lucky whenever someone brings me a story, but I've put a lot of effort into building that luck, right? I'm really trying hard to give, like, I think news or Hollywood doesn't understand hacking culture. They don't understand cybersecurity. So they screw up all the details. They think this one thing is important, but really that isn't. And I'm looking at this like, no, this is really where the important parts are. And yeah, I don't know. I built this kind of legacy of giving people, not trying to be judgmental on them or saying how awful they've done things. I might call them out on the show or something, but they feel it's fair. They feel that my telling of the story is fair, it's accurate, it's honest, it's truthful, and it's connecting with them as the person, right? There's a lot of times where I'll interview someone and they'll be like, well, nobody asked me how it felt to push enter, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
when I was taking down the database and I pushed enter, what was that feeling? Like, nobody asked me that. They all asked me, why would you do such a stupid thing? And I'm like, yeah, well, that feeling is a crazy moment. Like, that was a feeling that you probably will always remember.
Oh
So
yeah. I
so it
mean,
feels cathartic to them. It feels like they just got through a therapy session sometimes. And I think that's a lot of fun to just let it all out. Give me your emotions about the whole experience as well.
yeah, that's an interesting take on it. I mean, it's kind of weird that you can act as that person, can almost you can help people grow almost from what they've gone through by just, talking to you about it, putting it within the context. And do you feel, I guess, to that measure, do you feel that because of your experience in InfoSec that you're able to connect with folks a lot better?
Yeah, that's kind of where my superpower started in this whole space. So I think, if you're a creator, you've got to have to look for what your superpower is in this, right? And so I had a leg up because I understood IT security in a very deep way. So we can talk about, we can get down in the weeds. We can talk about the important parts. Like I'll get a producer sometimes who doesn't understand cybersecurity, and they don't really know what the important parts of the story are, or understand what was said in the interview or something. And so I can hold that space, in the interview, and be like, oh, this is crazy. I never thought of using the tool like that, or I never thought that, I didn't know that tool did that, or something like that, or where did you even learn this exploit? This is not a known exploit. And oh yeah, well, it
Yeah.
was, 2 days earlier it was published in Frack, and I'm like, Frack hasn't published a thing in years. And so I can be in this space with them, and they appreciate that as a guest. And I think the listeners appreciate just that depth of knowledge too, because there's something about the dark parts of the internet that you don't know how deep it is, and you're kind of scared. But when somebody is deep down in it and they're able to say, no, I'm at the bottom here, it's fine, come on down,
Yeah.
it gives you this kind of warm feeling of like, okay, I appreciate having this tour guide to like get me through this. This is a weird place, but I'll trust Jack. We'll go.
I'm gonna make sure that I say that out loud next time I'm listening to the intro. Oh, okay. Well, Jack's here. I guess I'll trust him. Oh man. Actually, on that note, so we did have a fun question from chat here. Does Hollywood ever reach out to you? Have you ever been reached out to? I know Dark Tangent has been reached out to by Mr. Robots. Have you ever had a production reach out to you like that?
Yeah. I've gotten quite a few calls from Hollywood. I think it was before the pandemic mostly, but um, the thing is that what they want to do is just in my opinion, a podcast, right? So they're like, oh yeah, what we want to do is we want to sit down to people you interviewed and have them tell the story to the camera. I was like, I already did that. You can listen to the show. Like like you have zero vision for what this is going to look like. That's exciting, visually, like visceral and they're like, oh, okay, well we can recreate it. I'm like, okay, so you're going to have someone sit at a computer and type for an hour. Like that's your recreation. Well, that doesn't sound very good. I'm like, I know you got no vision. So over and over, I talk to Hollywood and I'm just like, you guys, you're going to make either like an after school Hallmark special that's going to look stupid, or you're going to botch it all up because you're Hollywood and don't know what's going on, or you're just going to make a podcast. And I've already made a podcast. So no, 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 no. And I'd have an agent and my agent's like, no, dude, we can shop around. We can find that vision. We can find that director. I'm like, that sounds like a full-time job. I don't have time for that. So I feel like if Hollywood doesn't have the vision, if they're going to sleep on it, I don't care. I'm busy. I'm working on some stuff. My specialty is audio, right? So this is where I can be the most creative. This is where I can have the most fun, the exploration, the storytelling. I can put a lot of heart and passion into this. If somebody else has a lot of heart and passion and wants to take this and bring it to a video screen of some kind, I need to see that passion and that heart. It can't just be like, oh, let's just, roll it out because we can. No, I need more than that. I need you to make it better. And so I think what I've been playing with recently is like, you know what? Nobody's gonna do it. It's back on me. I'm gonna have to do it on my own. So I've been playing with an animation crew. I've found an animation crew that's just phenomenal. And I've been giving them like little, TikTok kind of videos to get started with, but we're working on 10-minute long videos and maybe 20-minute long videos and then maybe 40 and maybe full episodes. So I think that would be pretty cool to see it in an animated way. And I bet that would probably do the best as far as what I can visually come up with.
Yeah. No, that's a really cool idea. Has that been kind of the some of the driving motivation behind the YouTube channel that you set up?
No, I didn't really want to do YouTube. To me, that's like, no, that's not for podcasts. But YouTube kept asking me, hey, we want you to come over. So I was like, all
Really?
right, yeah. Because they were trying to get podcasts launched like a few years ago. So they wanted to get some bigger shows on there. So they kind of convinced me that it'd be a smart move because they're gonna promote like the whole thing. And I was like, fine. So I put some stuff together and I threw it up there, but it wasn't quite what I wanted to do. Like it was kind of someone else's idea, but I'm glad I did because it's now built. So this is weird. I'm having kind of a crisis, like an identity crisis here, because all this time I was just like, yeah, whatever, YouTube, I'll just publish there and just not care. Like that's not what I'm working on. I'm working on audio storytelling. And well, now the YouTube channel is surpassing the monthly plays compared to my podcast. And I'm like, holy crap, did I just switch to a YouTuber? Am I now a YouTuber? Like, this is my biggest product I have. This is my flagship thing now. I'm not a YouTuber. I'm a podcaster. What is happening here? So I'm kind of like, I don't know what's happening. And
kind of a good problem to have almost at that point, good situation just from weird, I guess, weird cause and effect.
Well, I have to like bring my whole team together and be like, are we changing? Are we doing new things? What should we do with this? So we're having quite a stir over here, trying to figure out what to do with this.
No, that's awesome. That's really cool.
It is cool, actually.
Yeah, I could go on with that. Thank you for diving into that too. That's really interesting to hear that you've had places such as YouTube and Hollywood, reach out to you with this. But I guess with being so visible within the community, that's, you're such a huge figure in InfoSec. Do you
Yeah, it's not just Hollywood and YouTube. It's book publishers, comic book author, like I think 3 different comic book companies have wanted to make a comic as well. And I'm not really into comics. I did say yes to the Black Hills team because they're kind of friends of mine to do one comic book. But it's not my vision. It's not my goal. And this is the kind of the thing is there's all these doors open in my life right now that I really have to pick and choose what door I want to walk down, because I could easily go down one and just not come back, because that becomes my project for the next 5 years. And so I really have to say no to so much more than I can say yes to. It's not like I need more opportunities. I need to go where my heart wants me to go.
Oh yeah. Well, and to that effect, thank you for saying yes to being on here. I appreciate
Oh
it.
yeah. Yeah, if I don't have to prepare a presentation, I'll say yes to things like this. If you're asking me to come talk at your conference, I'll be like, no, it's going to take me like a week to prepare, and this is easy. You want to just talk about me for an hour? Well, let's do it.
Right? I mean, easy to wing something like this.
Yeah.
One other question that I saw, I believe I saw this popping up in the chat, backtracking just a little bit. With the skills that you picked up with being having this specialization in storytelling in kind of this audio art form, do you feel like that's something that's been able to benefit you outside of Darknet Diaries?
Yeah. My storytelling benefits me outside Darknet Diaries. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's I guess it's kind of a nebulous question just because there's so many skills you pick up with becoming a podcaster. Do you feel like these skills, do you feel like they
Yeah.
benefited
So
you in unforeseen ways? There we go.
yes,
That's the word.
so before starting the podcast, I wanted to build like my language skills on how to talk about cybersecurity, right? Because you see things in chat, you read some stuff, but it's difficult to be like, I don't know, just to sound educated when you're talking to. I mean, in my company where I was working, I was talking to sysadmins, I was talking to CIOs. Like I had to interface with some people who know technology inside and out, and I was just kind of like a beginner, engineer, and they could say things that I don't understand, and just the way that they're using languages, and I was kind of lost. So just listening to podcasts about cybersecurity and how people troubleshoot things and what the different technologies are and how is that a verb or a noun, like all these different just things about cybersecurity help me like build those language skills to be able to talk about it. And then when I started podcasting about it, oh, that came out even better. Then it really solidified. Then I had the practice to be able to make these sentences myself and sound educated and like I know what's going on in the world of cybersecurity. So yeah, I think that was like a big thing, right? It's just being able to communicate. And I think this goes really well for just people who are in cybersecurity in general. Like when you want somebody to patch their stuff or change or approve budget or something, you might have the ability to ask them or to tell them to do this. And if you just tell it in your world, in your way of like, hey, you should patch it because that's important, um, they're going to maybe ignore that or whatever, right? You need to do it in a language that they understand. They're probably a smart person. The leaders of your company are lawyers and executives. Like they've been to, college. They're smart people. And if you're trying to explain to them cybersecurity and they're not doing what you want, it's not because they're stupid. It's because you didn't communicate with them in a way that makes sense to them so that they can take action on that, right? And so building this communication, I think, is such a critical tool for cybersecurity people in general to put your words into a report, to explain to the customer, to explain to anybody like what the importance of whatever you're doing is. I think is just so crucial. So yeah, I think just building language skills is a big thing in podcasting.
So what you're saying is, as a pen tester, I can't just sit in my corner and not talk to people. Come
You
on,
got,
man.
I mean, if you could write just a killer executive summary, I'd be happy with just that, right?
Hey, man, I don't know.
That's all they're
Depends on
going
the
to read.
company, right?
That's all they're going to read when they read it. They're just going to look at that and be like, okay, no action here. Done. No, I told you there's so many things. Okay, so you got to just do it better. You could be like, do not miss this part or something, right?
I swear there's so many times I'll write a report that I almost feel the need to bold a paragraph all in red or something. I'm sure you've been in the same boat, but
Yeah.
I mean, here, go ahead. Sorry, I'm cutting you off.
No, I'm done.
That being said, I did want to jump a little bit back to Darknet Diaries itself. As you were preparing for, I guess, any episode in particular, did you find that you had a favorite episode kind of before you recorded it? Did it surprise you when you were researching it? Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, that one you mentioned a minute ago, the Xbox Underground, when this came to me, Sanad kind of got out of prison, was like, I don't really know who you are, but I was told to tell you my story. Like, all right, well, a lot of times when people do this to me, I'm just like, sometimes they're like street hackers, right? Or whatever, where they're just like, I'm the one who did this thing last week or whatever. And I don't really like to put them on the show because then it kind of glorifies hacking. People got away with stealing $1 million. That's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
right. That's totally something we want to show off.
yeah. So my first response a lot of times in this situation is, can I see your indictment? Can I see your police record?
Man, you were kidding about that whole Google alert of hacker sentenced. I don't know what that says about our career field. That's a little concerning.
Yeah, I don't know who this person is, but that's like the first thing I reply. I see your indictment. Boom, he gives me the indictment. I was like, whoa, this is insane. And so I like realized how big of a story that was. And I was like, okay, this is the one that I want to put every bit of effort into to make it as best I can, because this is probably the best story that I may ever cover. And I literally spent 6 months on it. I was writing a big timeline of events. I had a character sheet of like all the people involved, and everyone has 3 names, right? They have their real name, they have their screen name, but then they have their nickname that their friends are calling them. It's ridiculous. And people are changing names halfway through the story. It was a crazy story. And so I really went slow and I spent a long time on it. And it was a massive, massive project because I had like 4 different people I interviewed for it. And it took me forever, and it ended up being 2 episodes long because it was just such a big project and a big story. And I was like, absolutely, this might even be 5 episodes long. It deserves all of the time. And yeah, that was the one. And sure enough, that might have been like my brass ring of like, wow, I mean, at first it was like the vision of the show is here. This is how I pictured it in my head. I wish every episode could be like this, but because it took me 6 months to make, I can't make every episode like this. And so it's very difficult for me to put that much effort into another episode when I'm just like pumping out episodes all the time. So that's why I think that might have been, maybe one of the top episodes, and that one felt good, and it's always people's favorites, and it all worked out really well.
I'd be lying if I didn't say it's the one that I mentioned. For even people that aren't in InfoSec, you get somebody that's a nerd and they get into it and they see, wait a minute, they got into the government from Microsoft. What is going on here?
Yeah, it's so crazy. And that's the one that you're listening to and you're just like, none of this is true. Why is Jack just making stuff up? And then we get into all the indictments and stuff at the end, and it's just like, oh my God, how is this real? How is any of this real?
Oh my God.
And that's my favorite story, is I'm not a big fictional story, consumer. I love when truth is stranger than fiction, because it just makes the stakes so much higher and more exciting when this is all real life that's happening. And it's crazy. And those are my favorite stories, when you just don't believe it.
Took the words right out of my mouth. I was about to say stranger than fiction. To that effect, have you ever felt that, has there ever been a story or an episode that you wanted to go back and revisit? I know you've done a couple follow-up episodes, like talking about the Israeli cybersecurity forces. Have you ever wanted to go back and revisit a specific story like that?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of my thing, is I really like to wait until the story's all done and then put it together so that it's done. Never have to update it. But then sometimes stuff does come out and it's like, oh, I really should update it. And I think for the first 3 or 4 years, I was updating stories, just right in the episode, just add another line at the end or a paragraph at the end and say, hey, there's an update. And this is what happened since I published it. But recently, in the last couple of years, I just haven't had the energy to go back and re-update things, because it is quite a challenge. So yeah, I wish I could. I haven't. There is one where some significant events have changed, and I will be updating that one next year, I suppose.
No, that's cool. Real quick, I did want to point out you are getting a lot of love in chat. A lot of people saying that they're huge fans of you. A lot of people asking if you have a piracy, like if you pirated a video of yourself and that's how you're sharing your video.
So this is a Snapchat filter I've got going on here. The Snapchat has really cool filters that you can just play around with, different effects and stuff.
No, that's cool. I'm just glad that worked out so well.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Let's see.
And the reason why I'm big on privacy and digital privacy. So I'm not showing my face online. I don't show my location. I don't talk about my personal life ever online, and do a lot of things to protect my digital privacy. So that's why I don't have that. And I like having a private life too. So I don't like walking down the street and having, hey, there's Jack.
Oh yeah, of course. That was actually, man, covered a lot of my questions just going into them. No, I appreciate it. Heck yeah. It means we have time for more questions. Let's see. Which story, I guess, well, this might be kind of the same question we just covered with the Xbox Underground. Which story took you the longest to produce?
That's a tough one. I mean, there's some people that I'll ask them, hey, can I interview you? And I just get nothing or not yet or something. And I'll ask them like every year, is it time yet? Is it is it time yet? And years have passed before they're like, yeah, no, I'm ready now. And so sometimes it just takes a year or two to say get yes. There's some people that I've been asking for 5 years and they still haven't said yes. There's a few people that have been on the fence for a few years. So it's and I do this by design, right? I want to get those stories that have never been told. I want to get those stories that are very difficult to get someone to talk about. And if I'm getting all these yeses and if they're easy grabs for people to just come on, then maybe I need to dig deeper. Maybe I need to find that stuff that nobody's ever heard of or something, right? And so I kind of by design want those really difficult to find guests. But I think the Xbox Underground one was probably one of the longest development cycles, about 6 months on that one. There's other ones where, like this Team Executor one, Gary Bowser was in prison. So I had to wait for him to get out of prison. So I'm sending him letters for like a year in prison. And we're not even talking about the story. We're just like, talking about prison and what's going on in the world and stuff like that. And then he gets out and we can start talking and stuff. So yeah, sometimes you just have to wait. And I'm as patient as a turtle, so I don't mind waiting years for people to get out of prison or whatever the case is, and do it when they're ready. You're not going to put pressure on them.
I mean, that way you really do get a lot of unique voices. That's crazy. Even having been involved with some of the Switch hacking scene, I was just surprised that you even knew about Team Executor and all that, just because it's such a, some of these things are so niche. Have you ever had something come to you and it just completely blindsided you as a story?
Yeah. I think there was another question that I saw someone have, which was something like, as you looked into it, did you totally get surprised? You thought it was something while you were researching it, but then it totally became something else. I think the Pirate Bay one was pretty surprising to me. I thought, just a couple scrappy kids put this together for some lulz and tried to, make a piracy website. But as I was talking to Peter in that one, I just learned like his worldview is so different than everyone else's worldview in the world. And I was just totally perplexed by it. Like this guy gets arrested for the Pirate Bay, right? And he's just like, well, I'm not going to go to jail. Like, what are they going to come take me to jail? And I'm like, yeah, that's what they do. And he's like, no, I just rather not. And I'm like, you don't have an option. They're going to take you. I was like, well, then have them come take me, but I'm not going to go down there to jail. And so it was kind of a weird thing. Like the police now have to force them. And I'm like, okay, so you went to jail, but how come the website didn't go down? He's like, why does the website need to go down? Because that's what you're in jail for, dude. And he's like, yeah, well, we don't need to take it down. And, well, but you're going to go to jail longer. Or how do you run a website from jail? Like it was, everything was just so perplexing to me. Nothing made sense when I was interviewing him because he just like shortcutted the whole world. Like he just figured out you don't have to voluntarily go to prison. I don't know. Like he just understood rules or laws or something in a weird way that I just never thought somebody could navigate in that way. And yeah, it just baffled me. It was just, it kind of just shocked me. I still remember like the place I was sitting when I was interviewing him, just what?
I mean, have you ever had to just kind of take some time to almost unpack who a person is like that?
Yeah.
I know with that with the Pirate Bay episode, you took a substantial amount of time just talking through that. I mean, even listening to that, talking about it now, I could definitely see the sort of almost like maybe stupor facing something like that. Have you ever been in a similar situation to that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is what I like about the show, is finding these stories that I'm just like, how what is happening here? I think the
Yeah.
next episode, I have those reactions quite a bit. So next one comes out at the beginning of November, and there's a few, you can hear me just like, what are you doing? You can't do that. Do not do that. Why would you do that? Oh my gosh, I can't wait to hear what happens next.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's just so much fun to listen to these stories and stuff. And I research quite a bit before coming into it. So the more I understand, the less I'm surprised in the story. But I still really try to connect with the person empathetically or sympathetically, whatever the word is, to
Yeah.
kind of feel what they're feeling, because they're feeling fear and they're feeling sorrow or anger or whatever. And I'm just like, tell me more. I want to hear that. I want to feel that with you while we're telling this story. And when you get in that space, even though you know what's going to happen next, you still feel like this, man, that must have been the worst day of your life.
Oh my
And
gosh.
you feel it with them. And so I really like getting in that space with them, and getting those feelings and knowing what that day was like.
That's man, it's wild just to hear you talk about this. I'd say I could listen to you all day. I guess I have before because you make a podcast. To that point, one thing you kind of touched a little bit on there. One of the questions that we had, and I'm trying to find the exact question, as you were researching an episode or as you were speaking with someone, were you ever frightened or kind of almost taken aback in a way that you didn't think that this episode should be made? Anything like that?
Yeah, I think doing the NSO one had me a little bit paranoid, because these guys have tools to just crack into your phone. But um, okay, because I was talking with like the CEO for like, I don't know, a year before publishing that one. I was like, dude, I'm gonna talk about you. Do you want to defend yourself? And he's like, yes, I do. I want to come on your show. I'm like, okay, when? And then like nothing is quiet. And so, I had email exchanges. I follow him on Twitter. Like, they know, they're like closer to me than I want to be, right? And then I'm just like, screw it, dude. You're not going to ever talk. I'm going to just publish it. And that happened. And so how much were they building on me? Like, what were they trying to infiltrate me before I published to know what kind of stuff I was going to say about them? Like that to me, I think was probably the biggest possibility, was that they wanted to hack into my computer to hear what I was going to publish before I published it.
That's
Because they
wild.
were really curious who else I talked to. They're like, tell us all the guests that you had. And I'm like, for this episode, I was like, no, I'm not telling you anything of what I'm doing for this episode. And they're like, oh, come on, we're not going to get on unless you tell us who else you have on. So
Man, that's
I don't think
interesting.
anything happened though.
Have you ever felt kind of that weird level of control from guests where they almost want to control the narrative that you are telling?
No, I don't think so. I do give them, I do want them to be accurate, and I want it to be correct, right? So I want them to correct anything that I'm doing and that I'm saying incorrectly. And that's about like the most control I give them on how the narrative gets told. Most of the time they're fine with how I tell it. Usually they are suggesting like, okay, this doesn't really matter to the story, but just so you know, this also happened and that also happened, and that sort of thing, and that may or may not help me tell it as well.
On that note, so you mentioned a little bit of kind of that repercussions of, fear out of people breaking into your system or things like that. Have you ever had a company come after you legally for something you've said on your podcast?
No, not yet. And I do try to, I mean, I have a lawyer and I talk to him all the time, and I'm like, here's what I want to do. And he says, I advise you not to. And I say, okay, but could we win it in court?
This like a weekly discussion for you? Kind of sounds like
Yeah.
it is.
So him and I don't always agree, because I feel like it's probably okay, and he's like, for legal standards, legal reasons, I can't agree with you. So I do push the line, right? I do kind of walk up to it, but at the same time, I do want to respect that line. And so if there's something that someone's going to come after me for, it's going to be liable, right? It's like I'm saying something that is incorrect. And so if I can point to, well, here's the source of the information, here's where I learned that, then I'm safe. So that's the only thing that I think I'm worried about from other companies, is just like exposing them in a way that is unfair or something. And I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to expose you. Someone else already did. There's an article on here. Blame that journalist. Blame this book. Don't blame me. So that's kind of, I skirt it.
I mean, it's smart. It's, go point at them and say, well, they did it first. I'm
Yeah.
not the one that's the problem. They're the ones that I got it from.
The court transcripts are public, man.
Man,
there was a time where I was researching a story, and I found like so much information on the internal infrastructure of this company. I was like, this should not be easy find. Like, it was ridiculous how much I had learned about this company from just a couple pivots and searches. And I didn't want to publish that in the episode, because it's just like, I could lay out their whole infrastructure, and that's just not cool. But it was easy.
Have you ever taken that information and almost wanted to report it to a company, almost in a bug bounty like circumstance?
No, that's not my. It's not my direction. It's not your role
here. Yeah. No, I was just curious if you've ever gotten to that point where you've almost been so uncomfortable with the amount of information that you're finding. But again, it's not really your role, though. You're here as a journalist in this space.
Yeah, I mean, I'll sometimes just send a quick note to someone like, hey, this is exposed, if you care. and if they care, they'll fix it. If not, then they won't. And that's about it, right? Because that's a lot of times that if they don't care, then then what am I caring for? I'm not going to care. Yeah. I put it on your plate. It's up to you to care.
Man, spoken like somebody that's worked in InfoSec for a long time. I did it. There was one really good question that just popped up. Let me go ahead and share this one on screen. We talked a little bit about kind of, not necessarily copycats, but these uncomfortable situations. Do you ever fear that your show will inspire new crimes or just more of the same?
No, not at all. The overwhelming messages I get are, oh my gosh, you've changed my career. I didn't realize how much of a passion I had for computers. I lost that when I was younger and went into painting or automotive. But I realized I love computers, so I went and I got my Security Plus or something, and now I just got my first analytics analyst job. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So I'm inspiring a huge number of people to get into cybersecurity. They love this. Nobody's telling me emails of like, dude, you made me hit my first lick. It was great, thanks, keep going. Like, zero of that, right? Nobody's telling me that. I do get people who reach out and they're like, teach me all the black hat stuff, and I'm like, okay, let's replace the word black hat with criminal. So you're just asking me to teach you criminal activity, and they're like, well, and I'm like, yeah, it's not going to happen, man. I'm not here to teach you how to be a criminal. So I think I do have a moral obligation, like to be ethical in the way that I present the stories, right? And so if I romanticize the crimes, then I think that will be inspiring to people. They're going to want to do that. If I make the bad guys look good, then they're going to want to do that. So I purposely pick stories that have a bad ending. So this person got arrested, they went to prison. It's don't do what they did. Do not do it. You will end up in that situation. And
man, we're back at that Google alert of hacker sentenced. Wow.
Yeah. So I unfortunately, there are a lot of cyber crimes that, never get solved. And a lot of times I get frustrated with it, and but I don't try to romanticize with it. I don't try to bring on guests that have done that, because I just don't think it's a moral or ethical thing to do in my situation.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That's a very unique take on it, especially considering, you're in this position where you could be looked up to by a lot of people that aren't looking to do great things. Let's see. To that point, there was one other question on here. Let's see. Let me go ahead and put this one up right now. Hey, Jack. So kind of the flip side of that, have there been any stories that have made a really big impact on you? Anything that's really, you've taken it and it's something you think about maybe in your daily life, or just something that really struck you as, wow, why would you ever want to do something like this? Or, just something you'd encountered before. I realize I'm putting you on the spot with this one, so if you want, I can come back.
No, I don't know if we could come back to it. I'm not sure. I think I think I had a very good understanding of the landscape coming into this, of just like who are all the threat actors, how are these big players here and stuff. I think the PSYOP episode was something that I just really had no understanding of going into it, right? So this is where the Army and intelligence agencies have psychological operations that they do on adversaries. And it's wild. I mean, they use leaflets and speakers and megaphones and other weird things, even like TV news clips and stuff, and like it turns into propaganda at some point, and it makes you look at the world like in a whole new way of like, okay, wait a minute, is this is this news clip that I'm seeing today a psyop mission? Is this propaganda? What is happening here? What are these politicians saying? And it really made me take a nice fresh breath of, okay, I can see which way the wind is blowing now. I think that one had an impact.
Would you say that hosting Darknet Diaries, or creating it rather, has made you a little bit more paranoid as a person?
I wasn't for years, but now I'm starting to. I think with the shift of AI, it it's it's throwing a lot of kindling on the wrong flames. Maybe. I mean, I love technology. And I love AI, and I'm here on the front row seat. Sign me up for all this stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, oh man, I don't know if there's a hope anymore to be safe, to be secure, to be private. I think we've just like totally. I don't know if privacy is ever going to come back. And I've always been hopeful. Like I've never like gave up on that. And yeah.
Oh, you're getting into my next question. This is perfect. I was just about to ask you how you felt about privacy on the internet.
Yeah. So I am hopeful. All right. I'm not a total pessimist on this. I think that we can do it. So you can be private by taking your own privacy seriously. And the reason why companies aren't taking your privacy seriously is because you're not taking your privacy seriously, right? They're saying, oh, I guess you don't mind if I have an app on your phone that has every permission available and you send all your data up to me. Just something I learned yesterday is that a lot of these keyboards that are on our phones, right? These virtual keyboards that you tap on the screen to type it out. These keyboards have tons of analytics involved in them, which basically means that you've got keyloggers on your phone and everything you're typing. I don't think Google's keyboard isn't as bad as some of the others, but some of the others are like, yeah, we're going to send screen, keystrokes to the cloud.
Yeah. Oh man, now I need to go audit my phone again. Oh
yeah. So, I don't know where I was going with that, but I think that
I think you were going to give us all homework for after this AMA.
we can research this stuff. We could find the keyboards that are more secure, they're more private one, and pick that, because if we're picking that, then that's the one that's going to be the leader, and we're going to be like, hey, we're picking you because you're more private than the others, and then the others are going to be like, well, we better get more private, right? So the market shifts to wherever we care about our privacy, and we need to care about it. And if we take it seriously ourselves and be our own self advocate and tell companies, no, I'm not giving you my data, and I absolutely refuse to do all this stuff, then I think there'll be a shift, and we're not doing that. And so I'm blaming all those people out there listening right now. You're the cause. You're the fault. Take your privacy seriously, and if we all do it together, then we will overcome this, and we will win this battle, and it will be an important part of our future. And we have to have it as an important part of our future.
Have you ever thought, I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to choose violence? It sounds a little bit like that's your Sunday.
Yeah. The quote I always like is, you either die a hero or live long enough to become a villain.
Oh my gosh. I don't know how I feel about you making a Two-Face quote from Batman. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I do have one quick fun question I wanted to toss in. Do you play many video games? Are you a gamer?
I'm too busy for that. But every now and then I'll just be like exhausted from being busy. And I'll be like, okay. So I'm not a person who likes to jump on the latest stuff. I'm like the person who, I mean, even with my show, I'm like a slow news junkie on my show. So I'm like, is that story 5 years old? No. Okay. Well, let's let it wait for a while. Maybe there's more info to come out. So the same with video games, right? I'm just like, I don't want to know the latest game of the year. I want to play the best game of the last 10 years, which is that. Like, what are the top 10 games in the last 10 years? Let's start there. So earlier this year, I had a finger injury and I couldn't type very well, but I could use a controller. So I played Elden Ring, which it was only 1 year old, so that's kind of a new game for me to play.
Kind of defeating yourself there, man.
Yeah, but
Well, any other games, any favorites that you have?
well, Elden Ring was quite a obsession for a good 2 months, I think, and probably spent 400 hours on it. So that once I get through that, I'm just like, okay, I've had enough for video games for a year. Maybe next year I'll try another. So I really liked
$400.
when the pandemic hit. Fallout was a really fun game to play because it just felt like the end of the world was happening, and you're in that world where it's just like, nope, everything is awful, and I'm just gonna just explore it, and it's gonna get me through this pandemic, and that was really fun. I played through Fallout 4 like 5 times now.
Man, you really embrace the whole irony of just these weird situations that happen.
Yeah. I really liked Skyrim and Halo. I've been playing I think the first 4 Halos because of the Master Chief Collection.
Oh, excellent choice, man. You're really doing my heart good here as a gamer. Oh man, I did have one other fun question. This is jumping a little bit back to the podcast. I guess there's one more fun follow-up question after this. Do you have a favorite piece of art from the show? Either as podcast art, maybe art you've had on your merch, anything like that. Do you have a favorite piece?
I think there's so many good ones. It's really hard for me to choose, but if you're going to ask me right now, I think the dragon that looks like an Ethernet jack is really cool.
Oh,
It's like
excellent
a
choice.
merge of the two. I call it Snapdragon or something like that. Is that what it? Yeah, I don't know, but it's really cool just to see an Ethernet jack like that.
Do you know which episode that is used as the art for?
No, I don't. Is there one?
I'm not sure. I just figured, hey, if I got the chance to put you on the spot, I might as well, right?
No, I art is just a lot of fun to do. Like, it's totally optional. But if you think about, like, certain musicians, like I think Pink Floyd, and I just think like The Wall and all this artistry, and I think Tool, and I think about like this claymation artistry, and I think about Radiohead, and I think about Stanley Donwood and how he like put all this art into Radiohead, and I'm just like, none of these musicians needed art, but every time I think of them, I'm thinking of their art. And so there is something that you can do, even though that's not your wheelhouse, that's not your space. I told you earlier, I'm an audio dude, I'm a journalist, I'm a storyteller. What am I doing in the art space? Like, this is not my space, but I just love to build that world. Like, I'm building this theater of your mind, and if we can expand it just a little bit more by giving you just a taste of like something imaginative to bring you deeper in it, to make you stop and be like, what is this? Like, I never saw a dragon Ethernet port. What is going on here? And it just it triggers something in you that is like, this is a whole world I gotta explore. Like, I gotta see all this, and that's what I love. It's just like, here, I got a big old world for you to come check out. Not just audio, but there's some visuals here, and it's a lot of fun.
Man, I'm telling you, just speaking as a fan right now, that's definitely one of the reasons that Darknet Diaries is so special. I mean, it's noticeable. I mean, I guess to that effect, where maybe getting back a little bit to the start of the podcast, how did you find that color motif? How did you find this branding that you wanted to stick with?
Yeah, it was so at first it was like the green terminal screen branding, and I had a different logo entirely, but that one I could not get to print on a shirt. There was like some gradient on the logo, and the gradient doesn't print on a shirt. All printers were like, dude, we don't have a million colors of green to put a good gradient on a shirt. And I'm like, so what do we do? And so I really had a tough time. So I was like, maybe I need to rebrand this. And I was kind of getting tired of the old green anyway. And I wanted something that I could build a whole world out of it. And the red, white, and I think I was in a bookstore and I saw a red, white, and black book cover. And I was like, that is a gorgeous book cover. And it's those colors that are really popping out at me. And so I snapped a photo of that. And then I just started playing around with that. I think it was 99 Designs that I went on and said, here's some of the ideas I'm coming up with. Of course, nobody came up with something good. so I had to like keep like putting, sticks in the fire, like, think about this and think about that and think about this. And eventually I think I came up with something, but I found a really good artist on there and I was like, can you make this? And then they made that and I was like, boom, we got a winner. So
Man,
the flaming laptop coming through. So I wanted like this street battle scene. I really wanted I think the original artwork is I really wanted Banksy this graffiti style artwork, and to be all like edgy and street and grungy. But I couldn't find any artists that were doing like spray art. I was like, okay, this is a little bit harder than I wanted. So then I was like, okay, what about like lino cuts, paper cuts, right? Where you're cutting paper in cool shapes. I like that artwork, and nobody's doing paper cuts. And then nobody even understood what this is. And I was like, crap. So I just kind of went with like my third choice, which is just like graphic design.
That's cool. It's kind of almost like a tumbling story to get to really what is like, it's very iconic branding. I mean, everybody knows the flaming laptop now. It's you see even the Darknet Diaries stickers, like the ones you had at DEF CON. It's such an iconic visual. Have you ever thought about updating it, or do you feel like it's really solidified its place, I guess, in the Darknet Diaries lore?
Yeah, I haven't grown tired of it. So we're at like 5 years now of that logo, and I'm cool with it. It's fine with me. So yeah, I haven't had a need to change it.
Heck
There's
yeah.
so many other things that I can kind of play around with and put it, like I could put the laptop in someone's hand and they're throwing it. And I really like that. That was kind of a play off of the Banksy, throw in the flowers, right? There's that famous artwork that he's done where it looks like a person in a riot throwing a firebomb, but instead of the firebomb, they're throwing a bouquet of flowers. I'm like, okay, well, what can I put in their hand? Okay, I could put a flaming laptop in the hand. You could be throwing that. And if that thing goes flying in, you know there's going to be trouble. There's something going on here that's just not right. And there's this knife edge that I've got to balance through, though, because, you know, like I was complaining about Hollywood getting it all wrong, and they've got the anonymous mask and the hacker hoodie and all this kind of stuff that is kind of overplayed, right? And you even see this sometimes with like security awareness training, where they're like, okay, you might have a hacker in your network, and the hacker's dressed like Spider-Man or something stupid, and you're just like, who comes up with these graphics? And so I don't want to be cringe in that way. I don't want to be embarrassing. So I want to walk through that and get to the other side, and then find like something really exciting on the other side. So yeah, hackers don't set their laptops on fire and throw it into a crowd. But I think that's understood. I don't know. There's a knife edge, like I said, of trying to be cool in this space and inventive, but then also not like claiming that this is how hackers are.
No, that's an interesting perspective. Actually, you know, considering, you know, there's so many ways that the podcast could have gone when you first started it, just because it's such a unique realm that everybody does go with, you know, that terminal style design. I did want to get into one follow-up question for that before I lose my point. So with regards to looking like a hacker, and trying to avoid that hacker motif, or, you know, that excess of how Hollywood likes to portray our field, we did have a bonus question. When you're browsing the darknet, do you have to wear a black hooded sweatshirt when you're on there?
Of course you do. There's no other option.
Well, there you go. You heard it here, folks. Here first, folks. Oh my goodness, losing my focus as I look at chat. Let's see. We did have another really great question from chat that I wanted to share. Jack, do you have a story you wanted to cover, but you couldn't?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a big one that got shared with me early on in this whole thing. That is the most insane story I've ever had. It really is this one that has affected me personally. And as I just think about it, sometimes I'll just be sitting there in the parking lot crying, because I'm just like, oh my God, this story is so heavy. And it hits me in ways, because, you know, because I'm putting in a lot of songs in these episodes, right? And so when I'm thinking about an episode, when I'm working on an episode, I'm always thinking about the music that's supposed to go in with it. And every now and then I'll hear a song that I'm just like, oh my God, that's the perfect song for this part of the episode. And it's too bad it's a Rolling Stone song or something that I can't actually put in the show, but it would be great, wouldn't it? And so it just hits you in a way that's just like, wow, that would be such a cool. And yeah, so sometimes I just think about this story, but the thing is about this story is that there's no way to fact check it. And I've tried so many times to do it, and there's just no way. It's kind of like some stuff that's happened on the dark web, and things just got really insane. But yeah, there's just no way to find the victims or find the other people who know about this story or anything, because it's just one person is telling me the story. So I don't know how much of it is true. I want to do it. I will do it. I just need the right, I don't know. maybe I need to wait until something more happens. That's what a lot of stories are like that, where I'm like, well, this is good, but is there, I think there's more that's going to happen before I'm ready to publish this. And I feel like that might be for this one. It's kind of like that show. What is it? The Apocalypse Now, where I think it was Francis Coppola had no idea how to end the story. And he was like so stressed out. I'm like, what's the ending of this? I have no idea. And it's the same thing with this, where the ending hasn't happened yet. And it's one of those is like, I think I have to just wait until there's a clear ending.
Man, that has to be just painful to have such, have heard such a good story and not know how it's going to end or how you're going to be able to tell it to that effect.
Yeah, I've started writing it at least a dozen times because I'm like, this has to come out. I need to do this. This is such a good. This is going to be my best story ever. People are going to cry. People are going to flip over their table. It's going to be wild, and it just never goes anywhere because it's such a hard one to sort out, and I don't know how to deal with it not being fact checkable. Yeah.
Have fact checkable. Hey, I appreciate the fact that you do put in that effort though, and want to make sure that the content is up to that level. Have you ever felt has that been an ongoing issue of not being able to fact check some of these items just because of kind of the nature of how things happen in this space?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of things that I wish I knew and I don't know, and I don't have time. I think that's really what it comes down to, is I just don't have the time to submit a FOIA request and wait a year and see what's in that document or something, right? Like that would be great. Or call up 6 more people. I mean, there's a lot of just ideas that come into my head where it's like, oh man, I really wish I could get this person on the phone, but they're a celebrity or the president or something. And I just don't have, like, there's no way I can interview the president to talk about this time. So yeah, there's kind of a limitation on what I can do, and as far as fact checking goes, but I always do my due diligence, and I'll research as much as I can. I'll call people who are familiar with the story. I'll ask. I mean, at this point, I'm pretty connected with a lot of people in the space. So if anybody is like, in this one space and I know like 6 other people from that space, I can ask them, can you review this? Can I ask you questions? Do you know this person? What is your opinion of this story? Do you think this ever happened? Like, you get some really good feedback from, or at least from I have a lot of connections now to be able to get a lot of feedback.
That was a perfect segue into my next question from chat. Have you found that you've made any long-term friends as a result of your work with Darknet Diaries?
I mean, I think it's the best thing I've ever done in my whole career, right? Is to build this, because it helps me through the dark times. It helps me make friends. I've made so many friends. It's crazy. And it's like every day I just get gifts back of just people saying nice things. And I mean, I literally get gifts. I went to DEF CON and I got like a ton of bracelets from just fans, and I'm wearing every day because I just love this connection I have with the listeners. And it's gorgeous. It's and when you make something artistic, when you put so much of your passion and yourself in the work you're doing, and then people love that just gives you so much wings and energy to just go wherever. It's amazing. I don't do it for them. I do it for me. And then the fact that they love it makes me feel so much better. And this is fantastic.
Man, y'all are so wholesome. This is just wonderful. I'm almost at a loss for words, because I've got one, I'm kicking myself because my bracelet for meeting you is over on my DEF CON badge over there.
I gave you a bracelet, didn't I?
Yeah, I ran into you and I asked if you could sign my I get hacker boxes, and I had a little SAO totem. That was me that you ran into.
Yeah, I remember you.
Yeah,
I stuck a bracelet on your wrist.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And to that point, I guess for everyone that's watching, if you're at a conference and you have the opportunity to go meet Jack, yeah, I can't recommend it more. I don't know, Jack, what do you have any thoughts on this?
I love it. Yeah, I met probably 800 people at DEF CON, and it was so much fun. This last DEF CON was maybe the most significant weekend of my life for as long back as I can remember, because I'm still coming down from the high, and that was like 3 months ago. It was a great time.
Man, time flies. It doesn't even feel like 3 months ago. I'm sure you've been in the same boat of just, oh shoot, what's going on that I need to keep it moving?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it.
Let's see. I did want to grab, this is a bit of a longer question for our next one, but it's about a specific episode. I'm going to read this question in full. If you're looking at the question sheet, Jack, this is line number 5. Hey, Jack, you, my beloved commuting partner, once you had an episode with the pen tester Jeremy from marketing, and you had a disclaimer that you would use more technical terms like domain controller in that episode. How do you decide which terms are accessible for your normal audience?
I was kind of winging it at first, but then I checked out Masterclass, and there was a Malcolm Gladwell Masterclass. And so this is one of my favorite authors, Malcolm Gladwell. So I was like, oh, I'll take his Masterclass. Let's hear how he writes. And he talks about this, the jargon, the technical terminology. If you put too much of it in there, you're going to lose the audience. They're going to feel alienated unless they're in this space and they're like, hell yeah, dude, I know all about what you're talking about. Keep going. So I kind of have to balance these two worlds of I want you to geek out with me, those geeks out there, but I also want to make it accessible for everyone else. And one thing is I treat everyone like adults, right? So I don't like super dumb it down to be like, oh, you're 5. I'll explain it to you then. And now there's a whole bunch of people who are super bored until I get through this, right? So I'm just like, look, you've used a computer all your life. You've used phones all your life. You're good. Trust me. You already know what an IP address is. You already know what a URL is. I don't need to explain these things. You know what's going on, and people do. The dumbest people I know in my life, which my dad is awful at computers for some reason. He gets what I'm talking about. And that's kind of my litmus test. You know what I just said? And he's like, yeah, I know what you just said. And I'm like, done. Then I don't need to like make it easier for anyone. So that's kind of one thing, right? Is just treat everyone like adults. Everyone knows what a computer and a phone is these days. But number 2, Malcolm was talking about what is, I can't remember the exact way he explained it, but what stuck into my head was there's this feeling that somebody gets when they get kind of the lingo, when they get the inside lingo, and they feel like part of the inside now. They feel part of the team. They feel part of the in crowd. Like, hey, you know what the kids are calling it? They're calling it the AD. They don't call it a domain controller or whatever. And so I don't know. Like it's one of these things that you walk out of it feeling like I'm hip. I'm cool. I know about this, right? And that's the feeling I want to give by sprinkling in some of this technology and terminology, just to feel like you know a little bit more. And yeah, it's kind of tricky. Like I said, there's a lot of knife edges that I walk down in this show to not give too much and to not underdo it. So yeah, that was kind of a helpful thing that Malcolm said, is make them feel like they're getting this inside information, and they'll appreciate it. If you give them too much, then they're going to feel underwater.
To that point, just a quick follow-up question, I guess kind of more on the content creator side. Did you struggle at all when you were defining that initial audience, who you wanted to be speaking to when you made your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of, other podcasters like, you got to pick an audience, man. You can't be for everyone and for the geeks. And I'm like, I think I can be both. I don't want to pick yet. Let me just not pick yet. Let me be on the fence. And I've been on the fence ever since. And yeah, it's always been a struggle. And at first I even like drew a picture of someone. I actually printed out a picture of a friend, and I put them on the wall, and I acted as if I'm just telling the story to them. So I knew them because they're a friend of mine, and I knew how much information they knew about computers. And so I knew when to go a little deeper and explain something versus they already know this, and we can go. And that picture in my mind of who I'm telling the story to has actually changed over the years to be a bit more educated, right? I think that's where it's changed. As somebody who's smarter. And I'm like, I want to speak to the smarter people. And so it's gone smarter. And again, if I'm going to imagine that I'm telling a story to anyone, it's that one person. And I'm like, I'm talking to you, because, and the other thing is I want them to feel like, I don't know, I think they're cool. Right. And so if I'm talking to someone who I think is cool, I'm going to be cool myself. I'm gonna be like, hey man, I'm cool. You're cool. Like, let's be cool together. Right. And so it's kind of like this weird mental space you get into versus oh yeah, Jack is dumbing things down, he's not cool or whatever, like, I don't know. Like, so if I can impress them, and then it works out that it kind of just works out for the rest of the, the audience. And another trick I do is, some people ask me, like, well, your narrating voice, how do you get into that? And because a lot of people who try podcasting are, they stumble over the words, it comes out dry, it comes out like they're reading, and I do literally read every word. I mean, the ha-has are in there, the oh my goshes are in there, like there's pauses, there's lip smacks, like I can't believe that. Like that's all written out. And so how do I do that? One trick I do is I literally pick up the phone and I act like I'm talking to my best friend. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this story I want to tell you. You're not going to believe this. Okay. So this hacker walked into a bar or whatever, right? And so when you actually have the phone on your ear and you're really imagining that you're talking to your friend, you do it in a much casualer voice compared to just reading the notes off the screen and trying to say it best you can. And so that's just kind of a mental thing I do to make it sound more casual.
Now, on that note, we did get a really fun question that I wanted to toss in here. And Jack, I'm sure you saw this one in the question sheet. When you're talking, once you've had this, audience design and you've really found this broad appeal, I know we talked briefly about Hollywood and these other places for content that have reached out to you. Have you ever considered taking your podcast to that effect and making it something like a Netflix series?
Yeah. I think we covered this. This was one of the first questions.
Yeah. Well, we kind of got there. Yeah.
I think that's on someone else though. So I've got stories for days. So who needs stories, right? And if you're going to pick up my story and make it boring, I'm not going to want to work with you. If you're going to do it in an amazing way, then call me up. Let's hear it. But don't bring me something that's not exciting, not gripping, not thrilling, not fun. Just skip it. So someone else has to drive that one.
No, that's a good approach to have to it. Thank you for touching back on that real quick. We'll go ahead and jump to another question from the audience. This is going to put you a little bit on the spot. So if you want, I can jump to another question. This is from Trash Puppy, which is a great name, I think. Jack, what are you most proud of in general? I mean, this could be your career. If this gets to a place where it might be a little bit pushing privacy things, feel free to skip on it. But yeah.
I think the podcast is possibly one of my most proud things, right? The fact that my inbox is full of criminals, NSA agents, CIA agents, lawyers, just weird CEOs. I don't know. It's fun. Like every day is such an adventure to be like, who's sending me stuff today? And it's just ridiculous. The places that listen to my show, like I can't believe it. It's just wild. And so it's just so much fun to just see who did I impact today and see what they're saying. And it's just crazy. And some of the stories that just get sent to me are like, my inbox is such a weird place to look through. It's so like, I don't understand. Like some of these emails, I just have no idea what to do with it. And it's just like, I can't ignore it because it's the most wild thing I've ever seen. But so I don't know. I just and like I said, the amount of love that the fans are giving is just helping me just be in good spirits, like constantly. Like I can't be bummed out at this place with what I've made. So I'm very proud of it. I'm so happy I did it.
Oh gosh, I'm sure that we all reiterate that back to you that we're happy that you did. To that point, this was a quick question that was thrown out in chat a little while ago. I think towards the start, admittedly, of the interview. Have you ever been recognized by your voice?
No.
When you've been out and about?
No, nobody's noticed the voice. And I also wear Darknet Diaries merch when I'm walking around, and nobody really cares to say anything about the shirts that I'm wearing, or even sweater or hat or something that says Darknet Diaries on it. So it just doesn't happen to me. I don't know why, because I do know that there are quite a few listeners in my town, and I don't know where they are.
Apparently not where you're shopping for groceries.
Yeah.
Let's
Well, it
see.
might be that I have headphones in my head like all the
Oh.
time, and so they're just like, don't bother him. I'm dancing in the hall, in the aisles at stores and stuff. It's wild.
Oh, so you're that guy when you're out and about.
Mhm.
Okay. You're sure that's not why they're choosing not to bother you? They see you dancing in the aisle and they're thinking, who the heck is this guy
Yeah,
down here?
just give him space, man. Back up. He's trying kicks now. Get out of there.
Well, I did not anticipate the AMA episode getting to places like that, but hey, here we are. We had another fantastic question from the audience. Let me go ahead and bring this one up. By the way, thank you, chat, for tossing a bunch of awesome questions out there. I really appreciate it. Y'all have had some great questions regarding your experience in the field. If you had to say something to Jack Rhysider in the beginning of your journey, what would you say to you, past Jack?
The other question that's similar to this is like, I'm just starting. What would you give advice to a starter? Or, what mistakes have you made? And I always have such a tough time with this. I mean, beginning Jack knew that he sucked and he was a newbie. And he was like, I don't want to be a newbie. How do I get through this? How do I become good? And beginning Jack knew that was just like, okay, you just have to do 100 episodes. That's the only way to get good at this. It's the only way to get rid of being newbie. So go. And you learn along the way. The things you learn is just stuff you would never be able to give yourself advice on. Like if I said, oh no, what you need to do is put this person on the wall to talk, this is the person you're telling the episode to. I wouldn't have listened to myself then. No, I like this person instead, right? And so it's getting that right information at the right time. It's making that mistake on your own to be able to fix it or to get past it or whatever. I don't know. I was going to say something like I'd bet bigger on me. I'd reinvest more because I was hesitant. I wasn't sure if this was going to work or not, and so I wasn't investing as much, maybe, or I was slow rolling the whole thing, and maybe I should. And that was probably the better option, to just take it slow. Like I was borrowing a microphone. I wasn't even buying one. Like it was crazy. Like I was like, I'm not sure if this is for me. So should I have bought one right away and just gone full blast? I don't know. I kind of like earning myself, earning my keep, proving that I deserve this before getting crazy with something.
Do you feel like that's something that's benefited you in the long term, that wanting to kind of prove yourself almost, or really make sure that you're making sustainable progress almost?
I think this is not the first thing I've created. I've done a lot of things before, and I've gotten into photography, I got into music, and what's happened to me is I'll get into this hobby, and then I'll be like, oh, well, I need these other lenses, and I need these flashes, and I need a better camera, and I just I just want to grow my, I don't know, equipment, thinking that is the thing that's going to make it great. And I've hit that trap so many times. I'm just like, oh, I'll buy better instruments and all this stuff. And it never is the case. I just end up with a camera that's too expensive that I never want to take out of the case, and lenses that like are just, don't scratch these things, dude. These things are expensive. What are you touching it for? Because you have it. Like, go use it. No, I'm not going to touch it. Like you get to that point and then you can't do anything. But then also just like, even if you have like a whole bunch of lenses, not even like expensive ones, now you're like thinking through every shot, like, oh, is this a wide angle, is this a zoom, what can I do here? And you become like limitless in what your abilities are. I could do night shots, I could do speed shots, like you get this. And with that you start just losing like the creativity of it. You just lost it. Like it's not
Mhm.
there when you're in like a little, there's a White Stripes song that's like, when you're in a little room, you get these big ideas and you know what to do, and then at some point you get a bigger room and now you forget what your big ideas were. And so I really like this idea of have a whole bunch of restraints, so that you have to be creative to get past these walls, to get through these ceilings, to really prove that you deserve that new tech, that new piece of equipment, and not just think that that's going to solve all your problems. Like, no, like this mic I have here, it really comes down to addressing the mic and learning how to talk into a mic and use the mic. And I could, now that I know how to do that, pretty much any mic can work for me because I know how to use a mic effectively. And that's what kind of I started was with these really crappy $20, $30, $40 mics. And I used a blanket over it and I spoke really close to it. And I used a pop filter and I had like a certain EQ that I would do with it. And learning that, like how to make a crappy mic sound great. Now when I have a professional mic, I'm like, okay, we know what to do here. I like this, the ceiling just got raised and I can take it somewhere new. And this is the space I like to do with all my creative stuff, is keep it as basic as I can. Try to hit that ceiling, try to see why this pencil is not as good of a pencil compared to a $10 pencil or something, right? Like what is this pencil? Why does the artist need that one compared to this one or something? Let's see how far I can push this one before I need that. And oftentimes I never hit that ceiling. It's just like, no, this pencil's great for life. And it's a 10-cent pencil. I don't need an expensive pencil to draw. And it's kind of fun to just be scrappy like that. I like to go to the rock gym and bring my own shoes. I'm not getting the rock climbing shoes because I'm not like competitive or crazy about rock climbing in that way. And I don't see, I don't know. And I like just showing people like, hey, you can do this in regular shoes. You don't need those goofy things. They hurt your feet. And I don't know. It's just my nature of let's be as simple as we can and see how far we can take it. Because I get trapped. I get trapped.
I got a cat that tried to join me on my desk. Here, go ahead. You said you were saying you get trapped. Do you feel that it's almost that the upgraded equipment almost traps you in that mindset?
Yeah. I get trapped thinking that that's what I need to be a good creator is the equipment, and that's not it. It's the passion. It's the creativity. And if you keep it smaller, you can have more of that. If you expand, you just lose it. You just lose your creativity. It's weird. It's a weird trap to get involved in. And I notice my own tendencies and I try to not go overboard with it.
No, thank you so much for speaking through that. Even as you were speaking through that, I could almost see the gears in your head, churning just because of I think we've all been there. It's so easy to want to go and buy the nicest, newest gear because you think, well, that's going to make me better at what I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, as you can see, that's just not the case. Thank you for talking through that, though.
Yeah.
On the note of when you were getting started, let me not destroy that question. Did you find even now or as you were getting started with the podcast, did you find you had any role models or any role models just in general that really inspire you?
Yeah, there were quite a few role models. So podcasting had a lot of big players in the space before I joined, and I was like, I mean, let's just say Joe Rogan, for example, right? So Joe Rogan is the biggest podcaster. He's got the most downloads and most listeners. And I'm like, well, how did he get started? Well, so first of all, he's been podcasting for 13 years. So it makes sense that he's got a big show at this point. If he doesn't, I'd kind of be disappointed, right? So is that where I want to be 13 years from now? Like, I can't really, okay, so let's put that aside. How did he get started? Was he a success right away? No, he was not. It took a long time to get anywhere. I'm like, okay, I don't really want to take that long time to get nowhere. So this maybe isn't a good role model. On top of that, he was already a famous movie or a TV star having multiple shows before starting a podcast. And I don't have that ability. I can't just like say, hey, a whole bunch of people, check this out. I'm starting as a nobody, a zero from nothing. So I can't use him as my role model. I don't have famous that I can use. I don't have 13 years that I could just spend. I want something better, right? So I'm looking for shows.
You're saying we're not getting the Jack Rhysider experience? Is that what I'm
No,
hearing?
Definitely not. I think, well, I skip that. So I'm looking for like people who started as nobodies that were able to grow in a faster time. And that to me is where the inspiration was. There was, shows like This American Life were really inspirational to me, but there are like 13 people who work on that show. And so I'm like, well, I can't do the work of 13 people. So I can't really use that as an inspiration either. And so I found a show called Criminal that was very similar to This American Life, but it's only 2 people. And I'm like, oh, I could do the work of 2 people. Now that's something I could do, right? So I met with them. I learned from them. I I studied like all their techniques and stuff, and it kind of lowered the bar too, right? Because This American Life is like top quality, but Criminal is like, no, let's just do a 15-minute show, right? And a little bit of music, not a lot, and the writing is a little simpler and stuff like that. I'm like, I could do that. I could reach for this rung, right? So you got to look when you're getting inspiration. You can't look for that person who's just like, that's the end of their career. I'm going to shoot for what they have accomplished. You got to look for people who, all right, this was their first episode. That's great. I think I can accomplish that. That's within reach for me, right? You have to look for inspiration that you could actually accomplish, realistic inspiration, not something that's just totally out of this world.
Yeah, I mean, it's much more achievable that way. It feels like you're creating something concrete. Do you feel like that? This is getting into another question. Do you feel like that helps you? Sorry, I'm getting bombarded with messages right now. Do you feel like that helps you keep things more in focus with your vision, keep things less you know how creative projects as they go along can kind of pick up all these little extra bits and they become more than what they really set out to be. Do you feel like it helps you focus having this mindset as you approach the podcast?
Yeah, I think so too. And yeah, I think having good inspiration that's realistic definitely helps me stay on track and not feel like, oh, I can't accomplish what they've accomplished. There were other shows that were just like so far ahead of me that I could never accomplish that, and I always felt like inadequate comparing myself to them, right? Like, oh, I wish I could, compete with them, or I'm not, and I'm trying. Like it never was satisfying. But to bring it down, to lower the expectations, say, well, what's the average person getting at this stage? What's the what's the high end person getting at this stage? And those numbers are a lot different than where Joe Rogan is getting millions of downloads per episode. And you're like, if you compare yourself to something too high, it's gonna, I don't know, dissuade you and take the wind out of your sails.
To that point, so this is kind of a connected question. I'm looking at this is number 28 if you're on the question sheet. What do you do when learning something gets complicated? Maybe kind of just when you find that you were in a more difficult situation than you anticipated.
Yeah, I think I go to where I learn best, right? So I'm a hands-on learner, I'm a visual learner, right? So let's say that there's a situation that I can't quite figure out. I like to draw maps a lot, right? So I'll draw out like, okay, these are the components and this is how they're connected, and let's go down the list and just try to figure out exactly the whole flow of this situation and see if we can check each part of it. And maybe there's like a black box. You're like, I don't, like, maybe you're troubleshooting a packet or something. You're like, I don't know where this packet goes through this network, but it comes out over here, so we know that much. And so maybe you can then look into that network or something and try to uncover some of the things that you don't know. And yeah, I've found that drawing maps of the problem is pretty helpful. Oh, another thing is just explaining it to someone else. I'll often need help from someone, and I'll call them up and I'll ask. And as soon as I say the question, I'm like, oh, I just figured out the answer. And it's because you're like putting it in your head of what the problem is and really just trying to frame the problem and explain the problem helps you understand the problem. And if you understand it, then maybe that helps you solve it. So try asking it out loud to yourself and see if that goes anywhere.
Now I have yet more problem solving questions for you. Man, we're getting through a lot of questions. This is great.
Well, rapid fire, let's do it.
Yeah. How do you identify when you're in a rabbit hole?
How do I identify when I'm in one? Wow.
I know, right? This is a fun one.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do is there a warning I need to give myself when I'm in a rabbit? I like being in rabbit holes. Um, I think when I'm hungry is when when I identify it, because I'm like, oh man, I'm like 3 hours past dinner. I forgot to eat today. I must be in a rabbit hole. When the world just disappears, to me, it's not so much the rabbit hole as it's in flow, right? So I'm like, all of a sudden, I just want to do nothing but study this thing. And that's the flow, or, write this stuff out. There's a lot of writing I do, and yeah, the world just disappears, and I'm just like in it, and it's just channeling through me, and I'm in it, and I'm researching, and I'm writing, and all this stuff, and yeah, I don't want to move. I want to stay there as long as I can. I don't like to multitask, especially when I'm in that flow state. I want to carve out as much time as possible because that's some of the best work that I'll probably do all week. And if I could stay there, that'd be great.
Now, a lot of people touching on that point, you mentioned multitasking, and multitasking is something that's kind of a divisive topic in infosec. I don't personally believe in it with splitting focus. Have you seen? Has it been something that you've kind of moved yourself away from? It seems like it's something that you aren't the biggest fan of, just from the way you spoke of it. Could you speak on that a little bit?
Hmm.
I know.
Yeah, I no, I do have opinions on it. I don't think I think I do better work not multitasking, right? So I was huge into multitasking for probably the first 5 years of my infosec career, where I just felt like, give me more monitors, give me, could you have extra keyboards, extra mice? Like I want to do it all. And I was doing 6 things at once, and I was good at it, and I was rocking it. It was amazing. I was the best multitasker in the whole team. But at some point, my brain wasn't able to process it all at the same time, and I was losing track, and there's a lot of half finished sentences here, and what were these, why did I have these tabs open? I have no idea what was going on there, and you start losing track of what's going on. And so the quality of work became less on all the different tasks I was doing. And you know what, I wasn't really rewarded for doing multitasks either. So I was like, you know what, I could do one thing at a time. I mean, to give you an example, like I was upgrading like 3 different clients at once, and I was upgrading their firewalls, and it takes maybe an hour to upgrade these things. So downloading, the new OS and uploading it, and getting it in place and rebooting it and checking the configs and all this stuff. There's times where you're downloading something and you're like, okay, well, I could do something else while it's downloading, or it's rebooting or something. I could do something else. And I was doing that. I was doing 2, 3 clients at a time, upgrading their stuff. And I was realizing like, okay, well, it's lunchtime and I've already billed 10 hours of work to different clients. Like, what's going on here? How did I do 10 hours of work when I haven't even, like, lunch hasn't even started yet? I've only been sitting here for 4 hours because each client had like, hours worth of work that I was doing, but I was multitasking. And I was like, well, can I go home now? Because I did 10 hours of work already. No, you can't go home. You need to sit there and finish. Like, I'm done. So you're not getting rewarded for multitasking. Like, okay, you know what? If I'm not going to, then I'm going to sit here for 8 hours and just upgrade 3 firewalls.
It sounded a lot like you were asking for more work for a moment there.
Yeah. So then we had some talks with the bosses and stuff, and it was pretty interesting, right? But yeah, I mean, I feel like if I can focus clearly on something, I'm going to have more quality work there. And I think it's the same, like if you're having a conversation with someone and they're on their phone while trying to talk with you. Yep. Yeah, I know, I'm following. Dude, I heard what you're saying. Okay. But they're on their phone, and you're like, you're not paying attention. And you get a much better communication connection with someone when they're looking at you and they're talking with you and they're making eye contact. You feel like they get you, and you get that respect. And I think that just is the way to do it when it comes to the work you're doing, because that focus and attention and put it all in there while you're having it is great. It gives you more quality work. So I should think about that more, because I have better things to say about it, but I haven't verbalized it in a while, that I need to revisit it.
Yeah, thank you for touching on it still. I realize I kind of pulled a very random question out there, so I appreciate you speaking to it. Let's see. I did have one other question I wanted to jump back to, kind of related to what you had just touched on. I guess 3 questions here. The first question is, uh, you mentioned your work in defense and working on these clients with doing creating Darknet Diaries and interviewing all these folks. Have you ever wanted to move to offense, or do you think that defense is probably where you'll stay, just given that that's where your passion's at?
I mean, I don't work in cybersecurity right now. I'm doing the podcast full time, so it's not like I'm
Oh,
staying in
cool.
defense. I'm doing this now all the time. So I lose kind of the skill set that was involved back then and stuff. But I think the red team would be really fun. I think that is probably an exciting place to be, and I would like to do something there. I'm not sure what. Like every now and then I do fire up Hack the Box and just try a challenge and stuff like that, just to do some
Thank you.
attacks. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun too. I mean, the thing
Let me
is that
sit
you
up so I
learn.
can see the logo here. There we go.
You really do learn something, right? Even if you're like, okay, step one, I have no idea what to do. I'm just gonna follow, like, watch a walkthrough. Oh my gosh, I did not know you could do that command. This is crazy. And so you learn something even when you're just like dumbfounded at it. And I like that experience. So I do like doing a lot of attack practice, and it's fun. I think it would be fun to do a pen test at some point too, but no time for that.
You sound so disappointed. No, that's really cool that you went to full time with the podcast. That actually was another question that I had saved for a little bit later. So thank you. Touching on one of the things that you just mentioned before I get to the other two questions that I've saved, you mentioned learning things from these interview experiences and just your daily learning. Touching back on the podcast and the research that you've done for that, have you ever come out of an interview knowing more about something than you came in with, or just learned something that really struck you as, wow, I wouldn't have learned this unless I was doing this?
Yeah, all the time. I think I try to learn something in every interview, and I think all the stories is something exciting or new to me, right? I'm always looking for not just a rehash of the same story, but something more interesting or something a little different angle and stuff like that. And yeah, I think every interview I do, I'm still like, whoa, I did not know that was possible, and I'm learning something here. So yeah, I think that maybe there's a secret goal for every episode that I'm going to walk away with more than I started with, because I did not know this stuff happened, and or about those tools or anything of this.
No, that's really cool. That's kind of a just nice little hidden benefit of having something like this in your life that you're responsible for. Uh,
And I want to get into the story. Like if there's something I don't know about, I want to know what the bottom of that is, right? So recently somebody's telling me a story about a hack that happened in dubstep, which is just a music genre. And I'm like, what are you
what?
talking about? So I don't like dubstep very much, right? But I was like, I should learn this whole landscape, right? So I listened to hundreds of hours of dubstep, got it all figured out who all the players are in this space, understand the music, how the production works. Like I want to know this whole landscape so that when you tell me this story about dubstep, I'm in there with you. I know who you're talking about. I know what the players are. I know all the music. Let's go. Like, and I think if we approach a story like that, if I really sort of embed myself in the story, then yeah, I'll learn a lot from it. But I think the listener appreciates that, because now we're talking about it from a place that there's a lot of knowledge here. We're not just like, I don't know anything about dubstep. Why don't you teach me everything? I don't know. To me, I like listening to people who know a lot. And if I
Yeah.
know a lot and I'm telling you the story, I think the listener will appreciate that more. And so, yeah, a lot of times I don't know something, and I'll just like endlessly go down this rabbit hole to learn everything I can about it, so that when I'm narrating it or telling it myself, I can add in all these really weird things that only people deep in that community understand.
Man, I starting to have a different view on life as it concerns rabbit holes. I'm starting to see that, man, there's really something there.
Yeah. As I think, as security people have this endless curiosity as well. And it definitely bleeds into making this show where I'm just like, what, kites? Tell me more about kites. And I get crazy into kites. And it's nothing to do with security, but I'm just like lost in it.
So you mentioned dubstep. Are there any other topics that you found that have just been tangential to a podcast episode, or something that you never thought you would learn about with doing this?
Yeah, I mean, there was that one Moneymaker episode where the guy just was like making counterfeit money. And I was like, you know what? There's no security part to this. I mean, no IT security part. It's just phony money. I guess this isn't a hacker story. Like, it's not true stories from the dark side of the internet. And so I kind of have to make an exception every now and then. Like, Like I also interviewed a CIA agent, and he didn't really do any hacking on that. He just did social engineering, and I'm like, is that even so I do find these stories that I still think are really interesting, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm too fascinated by this to not throw it in. I have to throw it in. And let's just take a side trip. Let's not talk about the internet for an hour. Let's go somewhere else. And I think people love it. I think they're there for it.
Oh yeah. I mean, hell, I'm there for it. The random tangents that you get on your show that, it's just learn something for 5 minutes about something really cool. It's one of the things that really, again, makes Darknet Diaries so special. Oh my goodness. My cats are trying to plot to take down the AMA. I had one of my cats hop up here and start bumping my microphone while you were talking, which is great. But anyhow, you mentioned the Darknet. Talking on the Darknet, and I guess Darknet Diaries as well. How do you see both the Darknet and then your podcast as resources out there? Maybe within doing research or just resources in general? I realized I gave you a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah. So the podcast is a big resource, because I hear from teachers all the time saying they took my podcast and assigned it as homework. They have their students listening. There's even some people at the NSA that said that they give it to new hires at the NSA to be like, listen to this episode, and this is what we do, or something like that. And I'm like, what? So this show is definitely a resource in that way, how it shows you the why this is important and how this is happening, and the tools people are using to do certain things. And I think a lot of people find it very educational. So it's a resource in many ways.
No, that's cool. Have you ever found yourself using, and trying to do my best to unpack this question, have you ever found yourself using the Darknet as a resource just in general, maybe even outside of using it for research with the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I use it to route traffic through all the time. So just the fact that there's that network out there, that I can anonymize my traffic or change where I'm coming from or reroute. And I'm really fascinated as well with the ownership of URLs on the Darknet. It's a concept that I don't mind going into for a second, if you don't mind.
Yeah, heck yeah, I'd love to.
Like I have darknetdiaries.com, right? And so this is a website that you would think I own, but I don't. I rent it because I have to pay yearly to the domain registrar to renew it. I don't own it. They can cancel it. They can take it from me. They can seize it. It's not mine. My website is not mine. However, if you're on the Darknet, you make an onion site if you want to make a website, right? So you've got this onion site. Now, how do you do that? Do you have to register it? Do you have to buy it? No, there's no registration. There's no buying. All you do is generate a private key using a public key, or you generate a private key, and then there's a public key created for that. And that public key is your domain. And so the only person who owns that is the person who has that private key. So nobody can seize that from me or take that from me, or I mean, they could steal it from me or accidentally make one. Like, it's possible to have a collision, I suppose. Very rare, but it could be done. And so that is really interesting to me, that there's this ownership on the dark web that doesn't exist in very many other places in the world. Just the idea of digital ownership is very tricky. It's like everything could be copied, everything could be taken or seized. I don't know. It's wild to me, that concept alone, that the onion sites are 100% owned by the owner, and nobody can do anything about it.
Have you ever considered hosting a Darknet Diaries site on the Onion, or having an Onion site for it?
Yeah, I've done this. It was very tricky. It was a lot trickier than I thought. It was the first time I ever made an Onion site, was for Darknet Diaries. Number one is what I was doing is just cloning my site to be on there. And there's a lot of, JavaScript libraries and CSS repositories or whatever that are on the ClearNet that my site calls. And I'm like, okay, can't have that on the Darknet. I need it to be completely self-enclosed. There's no outside calls. I want nothing to leave this site. And so trying to figure that out was a big challenge, because there's embedded and linked and stuff like that. Like, where are you even calling this from? And it would take me hours to like figure out, like, rewriting JavaScript libraries to figure it out, right? Because, you know, I've got an MP3 player on there that does quite a bit of magic. So that was a tricky one. And then trying to stay updated, it kind of mean that I had to update 2 different websites every episode, and that was tricky to maintain them both. And I ended up abandoning it because it was just too complicated to keep them both going. Yeah, so and they updated to the latest version of Tor, and now my website's deprecated anyway. So it didn't
Well,
even
that'll
work
do it
out.
too.
I guess that screwed up my whole idea of ownership. If they're just going to deprecate all the websites, and you're like, it doesn't matter, we're not going to use you anymore.
That's such an interesting situation to be in. I guess to that effect, have you ever considered doing something wacky like hosting a Tor node?
I haven't, and I think that's just because it is wacky. I've hosted honeypots before, but Tor, I don't want to get my ISP to cancel me, so I think that's the reason why I haven't.
Well, is that a little too spooky for you, Jack? Oh, good. I saw our Hacker's Haunted House in the background. I had to at least make one spooky joke.
I think I did it when it was first starting up, just to see what happened, and it just like, it totally messed up my download speeds. I could not get like anything on the internet. I was like totally flooded the whole time, and I was like, screw this.
Yeah, that seems like more pain than it's worth.
Yeah.
Man, has there been anything else fun that, just as a random fun question, have you ever put up anything fun like that in your home lab that you thought, wow, why am I able to do this? Anything fun like that?
Yeah, I mean, when I had a honeypot going, it was an accidental honeypot, right? So I built this website where it was kind of like Dropbox self-hosted. So I was like wanting to share I want to share files between my world and the outside world. So I'm like, hey, send me that file, just throw it on my website. And it was just like as simple as just drag and drop onto my website, and then I'll have that file, right? Well, what people were doing was they're putting on their own PHP script in there, and you know, there's like throwing all kinds of garbage into my little box that I set up, which was very crudely implemented. And so I kind of knew, okay, well, this thing is open to the internet. I should not trust anything that ever shows up on here. And a lot of weird stuff was showing up. People were just dumping all kinds of files on there. And it was set up in a way that like every day would just delete everything. But still a lot of stuff would show up. So I segmented it on my network too. I had a very solid, you know, firewall between DMZ kind of thing. And there's no way to go from that system internally. But yeah, sure enough, people were dropping root shells on there, and able to get into that system pretty easily. And it was really fun to look for those alerts, to try to find that activity, to reverse engineer how they did it, to find their tracks. And I learned a lot of just this whole methodology of how you can get a shell on a system.
That's really cool. I mean, it's just an interesting circumstance with, you know, creating that almost an accidental honeypot, as you said.
Yeah, and this is what's fun about Raspberry Pis, is you can just totally make them like, you know, disposable. Like, hack this system, and I'll set it up so that you can. Let's see how long it takes. Does it take a week, a month? Let's see how long it takes for the internet to find this system and to get into it. And it's just a fun little experiment that is just, I think it's great.
Took me a moment. I was looking through our questions, and I think you've actually covered everything that I have. I know, right? Huge kudos to you. We have just under 10 minutes left. Well, about 8 minutes now as I'm saying this. That being said, a couple quick things with the last little bit of time that we have. If you have any questions in chat, feel free to throw them out now. It's either, I guess, now or never. To that note, Jack, was there anything that I touched on that you'd like to go back and talk about for a moment? I really put you on the spot now,
yeah,
right?
No, I think I've vomited out quite a bit, so I'm satisfied with what I've said.
Heck yeah. Well, I'm letting the last few questions come in. Did you want to talk very quickly about? I know we had spoken a little bit beforehand, and you didn't have necessarily anything you wanted to talk about for just fun upcoming projects. Did you want to briefly touch on that episode that's coming out, or any favorite episodes that have come out recently?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm still putting out new episodes every month. So at the first Tuesday of the month, look for new episodes. And I bounce around between a lot of other projects right now. So, going to once a month gives me this time to think about other projects I might want to work on. And could be book, could be second podcast, could be lots of different things, playing around with the animation. So I don't know what I'm going to land on, but I'm definitely got some things in the works.
On that note, this is one question I always like to ask. Do you have any favorite books? I know we touched briefly on the book from Ira Glass. Are there any other books that you wanted to mention?
InfoSec books or just every book?
Oh, any book in general. Dealer's choice here, man. It's up to you.
I have a bunch of book recommendations on darknetdiaries.com/books, and those are all great books that are similar to my show, right? So they get into hacking stories and all kinds of wonderful things. But a book that I read during the pandemic that just kind of screwed me up in a way that made me rethink about a lot of things is Yuval Noah Harari, Homo Deus. And this is just kind of a history of humans. And it's a really fresh, fascinating look at humans and what we've done and how we act. Like, for instance, I thought it was interesting that, in the world of like fake news and all kinds of people trying to get to the truth of the matter, we're living in a world where we have all kinds of fictions that we just think are true that aren't true, and we just kid ourselves. Like, for instance, money, right? Money is a fiction. It's this piece of paper you think is worth money, you think it's worth value, but it isn't. It's just a piece of paper that got printed. It has zero value. It's just a fiction that we have, that we go along with, that we think, okay, yeah, this has got some value, I'll give you some bananas for it or whatever. And it's just kind of wild for me to rethink that, of like, wow, how much of our world is actually just totally fake. Like, we believe it's true, but it's not true. It is not true. And so it's fun to just kind of hear him go on and on about all these things, like, borders for countries and a degree from a school. Like, that's just a made up thing. Like, they just made it up. And you think it's worth something because you did a class. Like, you have knowledge, that part's real, but the degree part, that's just made up. And the fact that somebody else thinks, oh no, that's worth value, you can get a job here because you got that, is crazy. Like, just check out their head. Do they have the information you need or not? Like, I don't know. It's just really fun to kind of explore all this stuff. And that was a book that was really cool.
Could you repeat the name of that book just one more time?
Homo Deus by Yuval Noah Harari.
Gotcha. Well, I will be checking that out. That is a very cool book.
So he's got 3 books. One of them is on the history of humans, one is on the current state of humans, and one is on the future of humans. All 3 are fantastic. I think I've read all 3 like 2-3 times now.
That is, I never expected that as a recommendation. I never know what I'm going to get to an answer to that question, and that is probably one of the wildest answers I've had so far. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you for also linking those on your website too.
Yeah, I really try to be. I try to get a good grip of like the world and the arts and the history and all the things going on, to give me a good understanding of what's going on, because I talk about some big topics in my show, and it's nice to not feel naive about it and say things are stupid or didn't understand this perspective or that side or that culture or something like that. And so it's really important for me to like learn a ton of stuff outside of cybersecurity in order to get a good view of what this means. Like, I mean, that's one of the things I do on my show, is I kind of extract meaning from it as well. It's not just like, well, here's what happened, done, let's close the story. It's like, wait, this changes everything. This is a big deal. Like, what? So,
oh yeah.
So trying to find that meaning in there takes this extra step of looking back at the story, taking a breath, trying to understand it, put it through your consciousness. What does this mean to you in your worldview? And how does your worldview even, like, what is your worldview? It's from just the stuff that you grew up with and all this. So it's just really interesting to get a bigger understanding of the world, to understand meaning of these little stories.
Oh, that's such a cool point to make. Shoot, I had a place where I was going to take that. But let's go ahead and grab one more question, as I lost my train of thought there. Thank you so much for covering that, though. Let's see. One more question that we have in here. This is a fun one. What sites and forums do you use to do your research for episodes?
Pacer is a big deal for me. This is the court records. I like to look up stuff there. And yeah, I'll Google a lot. I think journalists have ways to dig a little deeper and figure out things, but I mostly just Google what I need, and I don't use Google. I use DuckDuckGo, but you get it. So I'm searching the web for these stories, and I'll ask some friends and stuff too, of like, hey, do you know anything more about this? And we'll go from there.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, it's a very organic research process that you follow. That. Thank you for sharing that. Let me go ahead and make sure that we don't have any last minute questions in here, just to make sure that I covered everything that I can. Otherwise, I think that about does it for our AMA. Thank you so much for covering all of the different questions that we had. Thank you so much to chat for all of the fantastic questions as well. Jack, on that note, did you have any advice or just parting words for our audience?
Stay safe. Take your privacy seriously.
Heck yeah. Well, you heard it here first. We're going to get the Jack Rhysider experience, and make sure that you take your privacy seriously. Heck yeah. Well, heck yeah. Thank you so much for being here. I would be remiss to not mention that this event is part of our Hack the Boo event that is going on right now. We just had our CTF wrap up this last week. One quick thing, just for everybody that is watching, and thank you, Emma, for putting that in chat. There is currently a 20% off code for VIP Plus and then Pro Labs Annual. The code is in chat. That is Hack the Boo 2023. That's all I have as far as fun little marketing bits to share. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you so much, Jack, for being a part of this. You've been a wonderful guest. Yeah, thank you so much.
Sweet. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Heck yeah. Oh, anytime. I mean, hell, my pleasure. Awesome. Then I think that about does it. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching. Thank you for tuning in to another amazing live stream. If you missed this and maybe you missed the start of it, this is going to be up on YouTube as well as Spotify. But otherwise, yeah, be sure to check out the past podcast episodes that we've done. Heck yeah. Awesome. Thanks all.